NBC Studios, Burbank, California. June 27, 1968. Steve Binder arrived at Studio 4 to find Elvis Presley already there, sitting alone on the edge of the stage holding an acoustic guitar. The king of rock and roll, who hadn't performed live in front of an audience in 7 years, was 3 hours early for the most important 4 days of his career. "I couldn't sleep," Elvis told Binder, his voice carrying a nervousness that the young director had never heard before. "I kept thinking about all the people who think I'm washed up, who think I can't do this anymore." What Elvis didn't know was that this moment, this quiet, vulnerable confession in an empty television studio, was being witnessed by NBC sound engineer Bill Porter, who had arrived early to test equipment and accidentally recorded those words that would never be broadcast but would reveal the real Elvis Presley behind the comeback legend. This is the documented story of the 4 most crucial days in Elvis Presley's career, based on NBC archives, crew interviews, and production notes that reveal exactly how the 1968 comeback special went from disaster in waiting to television history. The story actually begins 3 months earlier, in March 1968, when Elvis made a decision that shocked everyone who knew him. According to Colonel Parker's own notes, discovered in 2010, Elvis told his manager, "I don't want to do another Christmas special. I want to do something real." Steve Binder, the 26-year-old director who would guide Elvis through his comeback, documented their first meeting in his personal journal. "Elvis walked into my office and said, 'I want to remind people why they fell in love with me in the first place. Can you help me do that?'" For 3 months, Elvis prepared for the special with an intensity that surprised everyone around him. Scotty Moore, his original guitarist who was brought back for the sessions, later told Rolling Stone, "Elvis was like a man possessed. He was learning songs, working on his voice, getting in the best shape of his life. He knew this was his shot." The preparation was both physical and emotional. Dr. George Nicopolis, Elvis's physician, documented that Elvis lost 15 pounds in preparation for the special and had stopped taking the diet pills that were starting to affect his performances. But the most important preparation was musical. According to NBC's archived rehearsal tapes, Elvis spent weeks working with musical director Billy Goldenberg, choosing songs that would tell the story of his career while proving he was still relevant to contemporary audiences. The first day of filming was scheduled to begin at 10 a.m., but as we established, Elvis was there at 7:43 a.m., consumed by anxiety about whether he could still connect with a live audience. Steve Binder's production notes from that morning reveal the extent of Elvis's nervousness. "Elvis asked me 6 times if we were sure about the intimate concert format. He kept saying, 'What if they don't respond? What if I've forgotten how to do this?'" The format Binder had designed was revolutionary for television at the time. Instead of a traditional variety show with elaborate production numbers, half of the special would be filmed as an intimate concert with Elvis performing acoustic versions of his songs for a small audience of about 40 people. Camera operator Steve Cohen, in a 1988 interview, described the technical challenge. "We had never filmed anything like this before. Intimate concerts weren't a television format. We were basically inventing it as we went along." The first few hours of filming were, according to Binder's notes, disastrous. Elvis was stiff, over-rehearsed, trying too hard to be perfect. The spontaneity and raw energy that made him famous were completely absent. Then something happened that changed everything. During a break while the crew was adjusting equipment, Elvis started singing "That's All Right" just to warm up his voice. The small audience, who had been politely attentive during the formal filming, suddenly came alive. Sound engineer Bill Porter, whose recordings captured this moment, later said, "You could hear the difference immediately. The audience started reacting. Elvis started smiling, and suddenly we were witnessing the birth of something special." Binder made a crucial decision. He ordered the cameras to keep rolling during what was supposed to be a break. That break became the most famous segment of the entire special, the informal jam session where Elvis rediscovered his joy in performing. The second day began with Elvis arriving at the studio transformed. Makeup artist Larry Geller, in his memoirs, wrote, "Elvis walked in like a completely different person. The nervousness was gone. He was ready to take on the world." This was the day they filmed the famous Guitar Man production number, the elaborate staged segment that showcased Elvis as a contemporary performer rather than a nostalgic throwback. Choreographer Guy May Rogers documented the technical complexity of this segment. We had 50 dancers, a full band, multiple costume changes, and complex staging. Elvis had to learn intricate choreography while singing live. It was incredibly demanding. But according to Rogers, Elvis attacked the challenge with enthusiasm that stunned the crew. He was like a sponge, absorbing everything we threw at him. Dance steps, staging, musical cues. He mastered it all in hours, not days. The costume for this segment, the famous black leather outfit, almost didn't happen. Costume designer Bill Bellua's original notes reveal that Colonel Parker wanted Elvis to wear a traditional tuxedo for the entire special. Binder fought for the leather outfit because, as he wrote in his production diary, Elvis needed to look like a rebel again, not like a Las Vegas entertainer. The leather said dangerous in a way that a tuxedo never could. When Elvis first put on the leather outfit, the crew's reaction was immediate and documented. Lighting director E.J. Kramer wrote in his technical notes, "Elvis looked in the mirror and smiled for the first time since we started filming. He looked like Elvis again." Day 3 was when they filmed what many consider the heart of the special, the intimate acoustic segments that would become known as the sit-down performances. The setup was simple: Elvis sitting in the round with 4 musicians, Scotty Moore, DJ Fontana, Charlie Hodge, and Alan Fortas, performing for a small audience arranged in a circle around them. But the simplicity was deceptive. According to Steve Binder's technical notes, they used 12 cameras to capture every angle, every expression, every interaction between Elvis and the audience. The song choices for this segment were deeply personal. Elvis insisted on including Memories, a song he had never performed publicly but that held special meaning for him. In an interview recorded that day but never broadcast, Elvis explained, "This song is about everyone I've lost, everyone I miss." Singing it felt like talking to them again. The most emotional moment came when Elvis performed If I Can Dream, the song that would become the special's climax. The performance was so powerful that several crew members were visibly crying behind the cameras. Sound engineer Bill Porter documented this moment. Elvis sang that song like his life depended on it. The studio was completely silent, except for his voice. Even the camera operators stopped moving. Everyone knew they were witnessing something extraordinary. But what the audience didn't see was what happened immediately after that performance. Binder's notes reveal, Elvis walked off the small stage and sat alone for 20 minutes. He was emotionally drained. He had given everything he had to that song. The final day of filming was devoted to the closing segment, Elvis's performance of If I Can Dream in front of a larger audience. This performance was filmed separately from the intimate segments, with Elvis in a white suit, standing alone on a stark stage with dramatic lighting. The contrast with the leather-clad, intimate performances was deliberate. Binder's concept notes explain, "We wanted to show 2 sides of Elvis, the intimate, vulnerable performer and the commanding, powerful entertainer." The white suit represented his aspirations, his dreams for the future. The audience for this segment was larger, about 200 people, and their reaction was overwhelming. NBC's audience response coordinator, Patricia McQueenie, documented, "The applause lasted 4 minutes and 37 seconds. People were crying, cheering, standing. Elvis just stood there taking it in, like he was remembering what it felt like to be loved." But the most revealing moment came after filming wrapped. According to multiple crew testimonies, Elvis walked around the studio for an hour, shaking hands with every single person who had worked on the special. Cameraman Steve Cohen recalled, "Elvis thanked everyone personally, not just the stars but the grips, the sound guys, the makeup people. He said, 'You gave me back my life.' There wasn't a dry eye in that studio." When filming wrapped on June 30th, nobody was sure what they had created. Steve Binder's notes from that day reveal his uncertainty. "We had broken every rule of television variety shows. We had no comedy sketches, no guest stars, just Elvis singing. I hoped we had something special, but I wasn't sure America was ready for it." The editing process took 4 months, with Bader working closely with Elvis to craft the final version. According to NBC's post-production notes, Elvis was involved in every editing decision, approving every cut, every camera angle, every musical arrangement. The special aired on December 3, 1968, and the response was immediate and overwhelming. NBC's switchboard was flooded with calls. The network received over 50,000 letters in the first week, the most positive response to any variety show in the network's history. But perhaps the most important response came from Elvis himself. In a letter to Steve Binder discovered in 2005, Elvis wrote, "Those 4 days changed my life. You helped me remember who I was before I became what everyone wanted me to be." What made those 4 days possible was a series of technical innovations that are now standard in television production but were revolutionary in 1968. The multiple camera setup for the intimate segments required custom-built equipment. Technical director Robert Abada of his engineering notes detail, "We created camera rigs that could move silently around the performers. The audience could barely see them, but we captured every angle." The sound recording was equally innovative. Bill Porter used a new technique he called ambient mixing, capturing not just Elvis's voice but the room's natural acoustics and audience reactions. Porter's technical notes reveal, "We wanted the television audience to feel like they were sitting in that intimate circle with Elvis. Every breath, every guitar string, every audience whisper had to be perfectly balanced." The lighting was designed by E.J. Kramer to create intimacy while accommodating television's technical requirements. His production notes explain, "We used pools of light to create separate spaces within the same studio. Elvis could move from intimate performer to commanding entertainer just by walking into different lighting zones." The song selection for the special was crucial to its success. Elvis and Steve Binder spent weeks choosing material that would tell the complete story of Elvis's career while proving his contemporary relevance. The intimate segments featured early rock and roll classics, "That's All Right," "Heartbreak Hotel," Hound Dog performed in stripped-down arrangements that revealed their blues and country roots. Musical director Billy Goldenberg's notes reveal the strategy. "We wanted to show that Elvis's early songs weren't just teenage rebellion music, they were serious expressions of American musical traditions." The production numbers featured contemporary arrangements of Elvis classics alongside newer material like Guitar Man and Little Egypt, proving that Elvis could adapt to changing musical styles. But the masterpiece was "If I Can Dream," written specifically for the special by Walter Earl Brown. The song addressed the social upheaval of 1968 while maintaining Elvis's hopeful spiritual message. In Brown's own words, "I wrote that song for Elvis to sing to America. 1968 was a year of riots, assassinations, war. Elvis needed to speak to that pain while offering hope for the future." The small audiences for the intimate segments were carefully chosen to represent Elvis's core fan base while including younger viewers who might discover him for the first time. NBC's audience coordinator Patricia McQueenie documented the selection process. "We wanted people who loved Elvis, but also people who were skeptical, who thought he was finished. The mix was crucial. The audience reactions were genuine and unscripted." Several audience members from those sessions have shared their memories over the years. Susan Miller, who was 19 at the time, later recalled, "I went expecting to see an older performer trying to recapture his youth. Instead, I saw an artist at the peak of his powers. He wasn't trying to be young Elvis. He was being the Elvis he had grown into." The audience's energy fed directly into Elvis's performance. Steve Binder's notes capture this. "Elvis was like a performer relearning how to connect with people. You could see him gaining confidence with every song as the audience responded." The 4 days of filming the 1968 comeback special didn't just revive Elvis's career. They established the template for how rock and roll legends could maintain their relevance while honoring their legacy. The special's success led directly to Elvis's Las Vegas period, which began 6 months later. But more importantly, it proved that authentic performance could triumph over manufactured entertainment. Steve Binder, reflecting on the special's impact in a 2008 interview, said, "We proved that you don't need gimmicks or elaborate production to create great television. You just need great talent and the courage to let that talent speak for itself." The technical innovations pioneered during those 4 days influenced decades of music television, from MTV Unplugged to contemporary concert films. But perhaps the most important legacy was personal. Those 4 days gave Elvis back his confidence as a live performer and reminded him of the joy he found in connecting directly with audiences. In his final interview about the special given in 1976, Elvis said, "Those 4 days reminded me why I started singing in the first place, not for the movies or the money or the fame, but for that moment when you're singing and the audience is with you and everything else disappears." The 1968 comeback special succeeded because everyone involved, from Steve Binder to the camera operators to Elvis himself, believed they were creating something important. The documentary evidence from those 4 days reveals a collaborative effort where artistic vision triumphed over commercial caution, where authenticity defeated artifice, where a 33-year-old performer proved that reinvention was possible without losing your essential identity. Elvis Presley walked into NBC Studios on June 27, 1968, as a fading movie star desperate to reconnect with his musical roots. He walked out 4 days later as the king of rock and roll, ready to begin the most powerful phase of his performing career. The cameras captured it all: the nervousness, the breakthrough, the joy, the triumph. Those 4 days at NBC Studios didn't just revive a career, they preserved a miracle, allowing us to witness the moment when one of America's greatest performers remembered exactly who he was meant to be. Sometimes the most important journeys happen in the smallest spaces, over the shortest time, with the simplest tools: a man, a guitar, a small audience, and 4 days that changed everything. The king was back, and he had never really left.